I think we can all agree that David Sanders is going to play a lot of football for Tennessee in 25. Same with Isaiah Campbell. Those are Tennessee's 2 5-stars. But what other freshmen actually play for Tennessee next fall? We're going to give some bold predictions and some expectations here on a Tuesday, Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, good Tuesday morning, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Vols. I am your host, Eric Cain. Appreciate you guys for being here, making Locked On Vols your first listen, your first watch each and every single morning. This episode is brought to you in part by our friends over at Game Time. You can download the Game Time app, create an account, put in the promo code Locked On College, and you'll receive $20 off your first purchase. Big shout out to Game Time. Everydayers couldn't do this show without you. Can answer some of your mailbag questions. This is segment number 3. Tennessee is losing its special teams coordinator. Mike Ekeler is heading to Nebraska. That's coming up in segment number 2. But again, the 5-star impact. Who actually sees the field from this recruiting class of 2025 outside of David Sanders? All that and more coming up right now here on Locked On Vols. 5-star impact. Tennessee, of course, we talked about the last couple of days after the last recruiting updates, rankings updates rather, for On3, 247, ESPN, and Rivals.com. Tennessee finishes with a pair of 5 stars. David Sanders, offensive tackle, who is considered, according to the On3 industry rankings, the 9th best prospect in the class, 2nd offensive tackle, number 1 player out of North Carolina, and of course Isaiah Campbell, considered the 30th ranked player in the class, according to On3, 2nd defensive lineman and 2nd player out of North Carolina, only behind that, of course, being David Sanders. Sanders from the Charlotte area, and Isaiah Campbell from Durham, North Carolina. So, I don't want to say that it's assumed. I don't want to say that he's going to be given a starting job because, David Sanders is coming in here. He's got a lot to learn, right? He's 6'5", almost 6'6", about 275. They're going to put some weight on him. But, if Tennessee had a game tomorrow, I would not want David Sanders being my starting right tackle. Now, good thing Tennessee's season doesn't start tomorrow. Tennessee's season starts at the end of August, 1st of September. So there's some time. They're going to put some weight on him and all that, and he'll have to get used to kind of playing at his new weight. They need to get him around 300 at least, in my opinion, before the start of next season, and that's going to be tough to do because, of course, you're working out, you're sweating, so you've got to keep that weight on. But you're in a time in college athletics where, the name, image, and likeness era, your revenue sharing's coming and all that. You are making investments in these young players, and you got to play them. So I'm not saying that it's just assumed, but if David Sanders is kind of even Stevens with a Larry Johnson or a Bennett Warren or somebody else in consideration for right tackle, David Sanders needs to get the, okay, I'm going to start, get the nod. And that's my expectation. Again, we'll see how he does this spring. We'll see how he does in fall camp, but I'm under the assumption that David Sanders is going to play football, a lot of football for Tennessee in 2025. So David Sanders is kind of in his own category in quote-unquote starter, if you will. Again, I'm not saying it should be from day one, but I think eventually, maybe it's not game 1, game 2, but eventually David Sanders is going to be your starting right tackle for the majority of the season next year. So who else in his Tennessee class of 2025 is expected to see the field? The next category I have when you look at Tennessee's class is rotational pieces, meaning they're going to see the field. They might not play a ton of snaps every game, but they're going to be a part of the rotation, and they're going to see the field. Isaiah Campbell comes to mind because, again, nature of the position, right? He plays on the defensive line. Tennessee plays a ton of defensive linemen. They're super, super deep. Like we've talked about on shows previously, yesterday and Friday a little bit, what position will he play? Is he going to be a strong side defensive end? Are they going to bulk him up, slot him down the defensive tackle? I think that has the quickest path to the field for Isaiah Campbell. But regardless, the 5-star is going to see the field this year and be a part of the rotation on the defensive line. So Isaiah Campbell is up there kind of leading this tier of rotational players from the class of 25 for Tennessee. The next 2 are wide receivers, and guys, hey, nature of the beast, right? You don't have many bodies there. And sure, when everything's hunky-dory and everybody's healthy and everything, Tennessee doesn't seem to play a lot of wide receivers. First couple of seasons, that was evident. 21 season and 22 season. The last couple of seasons, they've had to play a little bit more, 1, for injury's sake, and 2, just to try to get something going. But, Mike Matthews is going to be one of the wide receivers. Chris Browse is going to be on the outside at the other. Right now, Braylon Staley's your slot. Where does Amari Jefferson fit into that conversation? But basically because you're so thin and void at that position, both Travis Smith and Redarius Jackson are kind of going to be rotational players right from the get-go. And this is kind of different because from day one, they're going to be rotational players in my opinion. And I think they're pretty good players, right? Travis Smith, on 3 industry rankings, had him as a top 100 prospect. On 3 rankings, had him at number 67. One of the top wide receivers in the class, one of the top 10 wide receivers in the class, one of the top 10 players from the state of Georgia, which is littered with talent. And, of course, Ole Miss and Georgia really, really wanted Travis Smith. So I think Travis Smith ahead of Jackson, but Travis Smith certainly going to see the field. And then Redarius Jackson's an interesting one. On 3's been high on him the entire time. He slid in the rankings a little bit, but still a top 200 player. Mr. Tennessee Football Award winner for his classification, 6'2", 185 pounds from Sheffield in the Memphis area. I think his skill set translates to what Tennessee wants to do offensively for sure. I think Smith would be ahead of him. I'm projecting right now, but I think Redarius Jackson certainly, again, because you just don't have many bodies at wide receiver, is going to be a rotational player from the get-go. So Sanders starter, quotation marks. Rotational players, Isaiah Campbell, Travis Smith, Redarius Jackson, defensive lineman, 2 wide receivers. I've got 2 more in this category. Linebacker, Jaden Harmon. He committed to Alabama. Tennessee flipped him. Alabama wouldn't go away. So, I've talked with Matt Ray, throughout our mini podcasts here in the fall over at volquest.com. And, we talked about Jaden Harmon seemingly every single weekend because, Alabama just would not go away. But the more and more I watch this tape and the more and more I talk to people, I really, really like his game. I think it's going to translate well. He is a sideline-to-sideline player. He is quick. He's explosive. He can play out of the box. Because you lost Jalen Smith, because you lost Caleb Perry, okay, we still don't really know where Jordan Burns is going to fit in this category because he redshirted last year and only saw the playing field, what was it, against the next to last game of the season, whatever that was, UTEP or whatever it was. Edwin Spillman's going to be the third linebacker behind Thielander and Carter. Somebody's going to have to step up there, and I think that's going to be Jaden Harmon. So I think Jaden Harmon from day one is going to be a rotational player. And, going to be in the top 4 of that position. And we'll see where, a guy I'm going to mention later is Christian Gass. If he's at the traditional linebacker spot, I think he's in this conversation. I just don't know where they're going to play him right now. But I think Jaden Harmon, regardless if Gass is in this conversation or not, is going to be a part of that defense for Tennessee next year. And then finally, I have Ethan Utley simply because they don't have a whole lot of defensive tackles. Highly rated 4-star from the mid-state, a top 300 player. Innsworth High School, one of the early commits for Tennessee in this class. I think Ethan Utley is a guy that can kind of come in, train, very much be a part of a huge rotation, maybe gets, 10 snaps a game potentially if he comes on. Won't have a big role, but I do think because you lost Elijah Simmons, you lost Omar Norman-Lott, you lost Amari Thomas, you're replacing him with, of course, you got Moy coming back, you got Eason coming back, you got Hobbs there, Nathan Robinson's probably going to slide in there, Jamal Wallace, where is he? You're going to need somebody else. And I think that somebody else maybe can be Isaiah Campbell or it can be an Ethan Utley. So I would watch for Ethan Utley as well. If he doesn't redshirt, he'll be in that rotation, playing a small snaps, but, somewhere around 10 snaps a game in my opinion. And then the final tier I have is, a tier. I've got starting tier, rotational tier, and a lot of potential tier. And this is based off mainly other guys of the position that are returners if they're coming on or not. Tight end, I talked about this a couple days ago, right? Like, where's Cole Harrison this spring? Did the redshirt season for Cole Harrison pay dividends like the coaching staff believes? Will he be the third tight end option behind Ethan Davis, behind Miles Kitselman? If not, it will be one of the 2, Deson Brame, who was one of the highest risers in the final 3 on 300 rankings. Or will it be Jack Van Dorselaer? One of those 2 tight ends. One of these 2 safeties, one of these true freshman safeties, or true freshman defensive back, there's 5 of them, is going to have to back up Boo Carter in the star position. Primarily, this star position under Tim Banks has been another safety, okay? So, of the 5 defensive backs in this freshman class, 2 of them are safeties, right? At least right now. Is it going to be Tim Merritt, who Tennessee flipped from Miami? Is it going to be Sidney Walton, who Tennessee had as an early commit in the class? Which one of those guys, or will it be somebody else? Could it be Tyler Redmond? Could it be Trey Poteet? Could it be somebody else that's going to back up Boo Carter in the star? Because we'll see about Jordan Thomas. How healthy is he? Okay? And Christian Harrison's not here anymore. So I'm watching that over the course of the spring. Jaden Perlotti, I believe, is going to be a guy that can really push to maybe be that fourth or fifth linebacker in the rotation. Christian Gass, I mentioned earlier, is he going to start out at Leo? He was listed as a defensive lineman per UT's roster. That makes me think he's going to start out at Leo. Or are they going to slot him back to linebacker? There's versatility in this game. You would think because they didn't sign a true Leo, he could be that in this class, but he's a player. I think the quickest path to the field is a traditional linebacker with Jaden Harmon, but we'll have to see. But I think Christian Gass is a name to pay attention to. And then finally, Marion Dye. Is he a guy that can slide inside? Is he a guy that can play pass rushing, in Rabbit's package, that can come into that strong side defensive end if they slide Dominic Bailey or Tyree West or whoever inside? 6'4", 270 pounds, a top 70 player, top 50 player per on three. Really, really talented player with tons and tons of potential. So let me know what you think. I mean, I like kind of breaking down this 25 class, the path to the field. I think David Sanders has the easiest, quickest path to the field. He's going to go through growing pains no matter what. But I do think, the rotational pieces from day one, Isaiah Campbell, Travis Smith, Rodarius Jackson, Jaden Harmon, Ethan Utley, and then potential based off others in the class or other returners at the position. Tight ends Hassan Brame, Jack Van Dorselaer, safeties Tim Merritt, Sidney Walton, linebackers Christian Gass, Jaden Perlotti, and then defensive lineman Marion Dye. Let me know what you think. Who do you think makes the biggest impact? Let's take David Sanders out of the equation. Who makes the biggest impact for Tennessee as a true freshman next fall? Would love to hear from you guys at _Cainer and at Locked On Balls. Hey, when we come back, Mike Ekeler. Chili is not hot on Rocky Top no more. What's the plan to replace Mike Ekeler? All that and more coming up next right here on Locked On Balls. Looking for tickets for the next big event, whether it's a concert, a comedy show, or the big game, finding the right ticket at the right price can be a headache. But with Game Time Picks, it's never been easier. Let me tell you how it works. With Game Time Picks, the app does all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals, so you don't have to waste time searching for through endless ticket listings. I've been using Game Time Picks for a while now, and here's why I like it. The curated deals make it super simple to find great tickets at a great price. No more sifting through thousands of options. I recently grabbed the super deal for a prime seat at the Food City Center. Couldn't believe the value. It was fantastic. It was truly a steal. The Seat View feature is a game changer. Before I hit the buy action, I can see exactly what my seats are going to look like at the venue. So it's really, really reassuring. Ready to make your next event even better? Download the Game Time app, create an account, put in the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that promo code is LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price. That's guaranteed. Hey guys, welcome back into your Tuesday morning Locked On Vols. I'm Eric Cain, and a fan favorite, one of the favorite coaches on staff, Mike Ekeler, is moving on and going back to Nebraska. Here's kind of how all this transpired. Didn't think that there was going to be any changes at the coaching staff, but you always got to remember things can, as far as assistant coaching carousels, right? They can linger on into the spring semester. Remember last year, I was coming back from Dallas for Tennessee baseball's opening weekend. I think they opened up on the weekend of February 17th through the 20th or whatever it was. And I remember when we touched down from whatever my connecting flight was, it wasn't a direct, but whenever I got back into Knoxville that Monday, I remember when I touched down and I pulled out my phone and I saw not only was Darrell Sims Tennessee's running backs coach, but William Inge was also Tennessee's linebackers coach. So those happened really, really quickly, but it was that late. So it felt like Tennessee was content with, extending these guys. Ekeler was on an expiring deal. Willie Martinez was on an expiring deal. Tim Banks was on an expiring deal. Now we know about Tim Banks, signed a big-time extension, got a big-time raise. Now we know about Mike Ekeler. He's going to Nebraska, and the assumption is Willie Martinez obviously is here. But it sounds like Josh Heupel was going to keep his staff together unless something happened. And with the case with Matt Rule and over at Nebraska, potentially he was waiting on a name. Potentially that NFL job or the NFL season was over. They talked things over and they decided that potential candidate didn't want to come back to college or come down to the college ranks and do it. And so you circle back around to a guy in Mike Ekeler that has a history at Nebraska. So I think that's kind of what happened here potentially. But Mike Ekeler's going back to a place that he's very familiar with. He started his coaching career at a high school in the state back in around 1999. He coached at Nebraska, coached linebackers from 2008 to 2010. Will Compton was one of his linebackers, so if you're a fan of Bussin' with the Boys, I'm a big-time Will Compton fan. So maybe that is plus in your category for Ekeler, or that's a detriment. I don't know. But obviously Compton was a special teams guy as well. But Mike Ekeler, coach in Nebraska. His family is still at Nebraska, and potentially that's a reason why he's going back there, still around the area. But overall, what Mike Ekeler did here at Tennessee was he coached the special teams and he coached the quote-unquote outside linebackers. But how Tennessee coaches the quote-unquote outside linebackers, that Leo spot, it's really all in a group, right? I mean, it's Rodney Garner, and Mike Ekeler was there to help, but it was Rodney Garner's group. And, Coach Chop was there as well. I mean, I'm not saying Ekeler didn't do anything, because he certainly did, but Eckler's primary focus here at Tennessee was special teams, and for the most part, he did a fine job. I thought, over the years, 2024 included, I thought kickoffs were fantastic. I thought sometimes he got a little too cute. Trying to pin him deep. We tried to do that at Carson Newman, and I freaking hated it. All 4 years I was there, but trying to pin him, down there between the 5 and the 10, and then just go and reduce the field and try to, have the opposing offense start behind the 25. Whereas you got a weapon in Josh Tuberville, dude, just boot that sucker through the end zone every single time. And that's what Josh Tuberville can do with his eyes closed. But nonetheless, when you weren't doing that, I mean, Tuberville and the kickoff team was fine. He was booting it through there, 82% of the time. I thought Tennessee's punt coverage team has been fantastic throughout his tenure. I think punt return has been really, really solid throughout his tenure. Kick return, they don't really, outside of Velus Jones, Tennessee hasn't really tried to return kicks. And that's just kind of the nature of how the rules have changed a little bit. Here's the stat on punt coverage. Tennessee gave up 115 punt return yards in 2024, averaging right at 16 yards a return. I don't have the stat in front of me, but the punt coverage unit through 3 years was incredible here. Like, I want to say it was something like mind-blowing, like you wouldn't even believe it. Like, Tennessee gave up a total of X amount of yards on punt coverage in 3 seasons. Like, it was that, I think 2024 gave up a couple of long runs. Obviously, Florida had one, and there was another game or two where there was a lengthy punt return. But overall, in 4 seasons, the coverage units have been fantastic. And, I'm not saying Mike Ekeler was out there teaching Max Gilbert how to kick field goals, but Max Gilbert had a fine season as a redshirt freshman, first year action, 20 of 26. When Tennessee's issues on special teams the last 4 years were penalties a lot of the time. It's like you got to clean it up. You got to play clean. But overall, Mike Ekeler did a fine job here in regards to special teams. He played a role in James Pierce and Roman Harrison and Byron Young and some of these other Leo-type guys, but for the most part, that's a defensive line group that falls under the umbrella of Rodney Garner, in my opinion. So what will Tennessee do to replace Mike Ekeler? I like Mike Ekeler. He was always nice to me. I think you need a guy on staff that is an energy guy, that is a player's coach, ready to run through a wall, literally. I mean, fans fell in love with him, like headbutting whoever it was and bleeding during the game. I think you need a guy on staff like that, I do. I do think that this can be a seamless transition, though. Why? Well, I don't know what Josh Heupel will do. I have assumptions, I have beliefs, but at the end of the day, I'm not Josh Heupel. I don't know what he will do. But let's look at what he's done in years past. He hires from within, offensively, and he's done it defensively. Promotions from support staff to the on-the-field coaching staff in years past, right? You've got Kelsey Pope, Alec Ablin. You have Joey Halsley, went from quarterbacks coach to OC. You have, is there another one? I want to say there's probably another one somewhere that I'm forgetting. But you have promoted a lot, right? And I think this could be the most seamless transition, and this might make the most sense of any in-house promotion, is if you go and hire Coach Chop to be your quote-unquote assistant coach on the field. Now, it's a little bit different. A couple years ago, being an on-the-field coach, assistant coach, meant so much more, right? But now you can have as many coaches as you want, but only so many can go on the road recruiting. Well, this makes the most sense because Chop is Rodney Garner's right-hand man. He's right there. He helps everything that goes on in the defensive line. Chop has experience coaching the Leos, okay? He's been around the game for 20, 25 years, coaching defensive line, number of different stops, and he has been here with Rodney Garner, dating back to Auburn, but also here throughout the 4 years so far. He also is one of the key recruiters on staff for Tennessee. In fact, you can now choose who you want to go on you can only have 8 or 9 or whatever it is. you can now choose who you want to be on the road. And this offseason, Mike Ekeler's not been on the road. It's been Coach Chop. It's been Lavorne Harbin, Coach Chop. And so, again, this is about as seamless of a transition as you can possibly imagine. I think recruiting stays the same because he's already had such a huge impact. On the field coach, you got a guy that's already doing it as well. Again, seamless. So if you do hire or quote-unquote promote Coach Chop, who was already making pretty good money, one of the highest paid analysts on staff, he'll get a pay raise, of course, and be on the field coach, okay, and have that title. He'll get a little bit of a bump. But if that's what you are going to do, what direction would you go in terms of special teams? Well, again, much like Coach Chop in the past, you have analysts that kind of help. So I don't think if they go in this direction, I don't think you'd have a quote-unquote special teams coordinator. I think you would have a number of different coaches help out. And again, I didn't play at Tennessee. When I played at D2 10 years ago or whatever, it could be completely different. But all of our coaches had a unit that they coach, right? So there wasn't one special teams coordinator, quote-unquote, that did it all, right? You had perfect example, right? My sophomore year at CN, Darrell Sims coached running backs. I clearly was not a running back, but he coached kickoff team, and I was on kickoff team. So he coached kickoff team, and the safeties coach punt return, and so on and so forth. Tennessee can kind of take that approach, like a lot of other teams do, and I could see that happening. So we'll see what happens if that's what Josh Heupel's going to do, if he will promote Coach Chop, or if he'll go outside. But nonetheless, I have assumptions, but again, I'm not Josh Heupel. We'll see what he has to do. Best of luck to Mike Ekeler, though. Good guy. His daughters, went to Tennessee. Again, everybody needs a guy like Mike Ekeler on staff, and so Nebraska going back, not home, but a place he's very familiar with, that is good for him. So best of luck to Mike Ekeler, and we'll see what Josh Heupel is going to do to fill the void that he leaves behind in the coaching staff. All right, when we come back, everydayers, we're going to get into some of your questions. And how do you combat teams banking on picking up Chaz Lanier off screen, shooting a three? I've asked some people who are much smarter in terms of basketball X's and O's than I am. Answer that and so much more at your mailbag coming up next right here on Locked On Vols. All right, guys and gals, got a couple minutes left here, and we will take this time to answer your questions for the mailbag edition of Locked On Vols. We'll start with Rocky Top Tom. What is the one or what are some keys to another baseball title this year? Opening day next Friday. A lot of lucky breaks and endurance are involved in baseball, but does this team have it like last year's? We'll find out. How do teams face adversity? Last year, Tennessee never lost back-to-back games, ever. Okay? Or, excuse me. Tennessee lost back-to-back games one time. It was the SEC season opener at Alabama, where they lost that. Only conference series they lost all year. And so Tennessee faced adversity great. Every time they dropped a game, they bounced back in a huge way. Will this team be the same way? We'll find out. We'll find out. As far as a talent perspective, team's loaded as always, man. Tennessee's going to have hitters. Tennessee's going to have arms, as we'll get into leading up to opening day, because I'm going to spend a couple of second number threes later this week and certainly next week kind of breaking down Tennessee's roster and all that. Because, hey, reigning national champions, right? I mean, you guys loved it when I talked baseball last summer when they were in Omaha, and I'm going to do it again. But we just got to figure out kind of who has what role in the rotation and the bullpen and all that. There's five junior college arms that I think can play a huge impact here with Tennessee. A couple of freshmen, Jay Abernathy, I think is going to be big, Levi Clark. So talent, yes. They just need to figure out who has what role, and that's what the early season's about. That's what the pre-SEC slate's all about. And it's not like it's going to be a finished product once the Gators roll into town mid-March for the SEC opener, but you continue to figure out when's A.J. Russell coming back. When he comes back, boy, that's an ace in the hole, right? But yeah, does this team have what it takes from a talent perspective? Absolutely. Where is their resiliency? Where is their mindset when they hit adversity? I don't know yet because we've never seen this team. But I'm excited to watch him, man. I'm excited to watch him for sure. We'll go to Braden. Braden wants to know, here's that basketball question that he asked that I had to get Grant Ramey to answer for me. What would our counter be to teams keying on heavily Lanier coming off screen and shooting behind the arc? And, I mean, I had some thoughts, but, obviously I asked Grant because he can explain it just so much better than me. because I don't speak basketball, but obviously my first thought was like, well, you got to have an inside presence, right? I mean, if you have a consistent inside presence, then you've got to respect that. It's like the read option. If your quarterback never keeps it, that end or that outside linebacker is never going to respect your quarterback, and he's always going to go dive. And it just takes the quarterback pulling it and going around left side and going 70 yards to the checkerboards for that to change. But yeah, Grant kind of said the same thing. Paint touches early in possessions, playing inside out, cuts to the rim, coming off screen, backdoor cuts, rolling the screener, guards driving and kicking out. Like, again, playing inside out. Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. He said also Chaz himself needs to cut harder, create more separations, being physically ready to shoot, having the body turn to the rim, and shoot with confidence coming off screens. So I'm glad I asked him because he answered that so much better than me. Also, Braden wants to know, if you were the GM of the Titans, what would you do to fix this team this offseason? Well, in short, you're not going to fix that program in one offseason, that organization in one offseason, in my opinion. What I would not do, and they did it a couple years ago with a second-round pick. There's a reason you don't draft quarterbacks in the second round. If you didn't have the confidence to get them for that extra year of control in the first round, then why are you taking them in the second round? I digress. Please, for the love of God, do not take a quarterback at number 1 overall. I am fine if you take Carter. I am fine if you take Edge. I'm fine if you take any type of defensive lineman, one of those OTs potentially. Please, for the love of everything holy, do not take a quarterback with the number 1 overall pick. I would much rather Tennessee trade the number 1 overall pick, stack up on draft picks and or get you something good in return, trade down, and get quality as well as a little bit of quantity, because you have that quote-unquote ace in the hole, like I said last segment, or like I said last question, with that number 1 overall pick. So I don't know what I would do, but what I wouldn't do is draft one of these quarterbacks with the number 1 overall pick. And I was pretty much done when they drafted Levis in the second round. I mean, I'm still a fan, but it's not good, man. It's not good. A couple more here. We'll go to Matthew. Shout out Oz. Break down a position or breakout position player and pitcher for the baseball team this year. I've kind of been answering this one the last couple of days. I think Michael Sharman on the mound is going to be a guy that has a big role for Tennessee. He's a junior college pitcher. When we think of some of these junior college names on the arms that are going to play a big role for Tennessee, and I still think that they will, Brandon Arvidson's the first name that comes out of their mouth. Ryan Combs, younger brother of Aaron Combs, Tanner Wiggins, Thomas Crabtree. Michael Sharman is never the name that's mentioned. He's usually mentioned 5th in this conversation, but I think he's going to be a guy that really will play well for Tennessee this year on the mound. So Michael Sharman would be my breakout pitcher for the baseball team this season. My breakout positional player does Cannon Peebles count? Because he broke out at NC State, but he's never broke out here. He's my answer if that's allowed. If he's not allowed, then my answer will be Reese Chapman. Okay, because again, at some point that's got to hit. There's so much talent there. Didn't play as a true freshman. Got some opportunities last year. Was not consistent. Therefore, didn't get more opportunities. And ultimately, it was Kavoris Tears in right field as the season waned on. Reese Chapman absolutely would be that answer there. We'll go to Kurtz. Kurt says, with the Heisman odds having Arch and Nico being in the top 3, how much of the SEC botched not scheduling Texas versus Tennessee in 2025? There's little to no chance either of them will be in college in 26, so this was the one chance to see them battle it out against each other. Yeah, it just goes back to more the SEC's been super lazy, and I understand there's a wait-and-see approach. What did the first 12-team college football playoffs look like? Will they, based off that, will they stay at 8 games in the regular season or the conference slate? Will they expand to 9 games? You know, the Big Ten does 9 games. Doesn't the ACC do 9 games at the Big 12? You guys know my stance on that. If you want to pump your chest and say it just means more, we'll play another daggum game, right? Act like it. But then again, you saw the SEC cannibalize each other this year. So if you're Greg Sankey and you're looking out for the best interest of the league, it's like, well, why do I want to play another conference game if I'm just going to have somebody like Oklahoma knock off Alabama late in the season like what happened last year? So I get it. It's all about TV money as well. If the price is right. and ESPN is willing to fork over a ton of money for that extra game, then I don't see anything stopping. So bottom line is the SEC was super lazy in the scheduling by creating a schedule for 24, not keeping the same dates or the same order, but just flipping it for 25 while they still do this wait and see approach. Super lazy. They screwed it up. I'm with you, man. Tennessee played Oklahoma last year. That's awesome. I want to see UT versus UT. I want to see beautiful orange against burnt orange, right? I mean, I want to see all that. I want to see Nico versus Arch. We'll see how both of those guys perform this year. I don't think Arch is in a huge hurry to get to the NFL. He's going to have guidance like nobody's business with his family. Nico, the plan was to be here 3 years ago to the NFL. Based off Nico's 1 year of starting so far, he would not have left, or I don't think he would have entered the draft if he had been draft eligible this year, because there's still another level to get there. So hopefully we see those guys play in college at some point, maybe in the SEC championship, maybe in the college football playoffs, maybe in 2026. But to your point, man, yeah, SEC screwed it up. They were just super lazy, super lazy. Final question is going to go to Cade. Should I start my next road to glory at Eastern Michigan or Toledo? Well, Cade, simply, do you want to be an Eagle? I'm an Eagle. Carson Newman Eagles, baby. Hey, I'm all about Eagles. I live in the Corrington area, technically not in Corrington. If we stay here, for my son the son that's on his way to start school, he'd be zoned for Gibbs. It's the Eagles, right? I'm a big time Eagle. I like the Eagles. But Toledo or the Rockets? Would you rather be an Eagle or a Rocket? Would you rather soar? Would you rather go to space, right? I say go with Toledo, baby. Be a Rocket and bring home that college football playoff national championship. That's a great place to end, guys. Thank you so much for joining me here on Locked On Vols this Tuesday show. Couldn't do it without you guys. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vols your first listen, your first watch each and every single day. We will do it again tomorrow. This is Locked On Vols.